And we are live, and we're brought to you once again by Lotto Land, our great sponsors. And the great Shane Stapleton is back. Shane, what's the crack? You're a happy man this week.
Happy enough. You didn't turn on the intro music.
I tried to, but I failed miserably.
A technophobe. Yeah, good weekend for Tipperary. I was down at the game, and I had said to you beforehand that Tipperary were going to win, and it was kind of like the boxer who says not only what sort of punch he's going to beat you with, but he picks the round as well. I told you, no, I got the Limerick one wrong, okay? Obviously we all get the odd game wrong, but I was saying that the athleticism divide that had been spoken of so much about Waterford against Tipperary, that had shrunk, that some of their key players were no longer in their prime, and that Tipperary had come up a notch in terms of athleticism. And at that stage then it was a case of like, well, who's got the more better hurlers on the pitch? And I felt that Tip had, and like, I know every second of the 70-minute counts, but if you took out that first 10 seconds when Tipperary conceded a goal, being maybe a little bit half asleep or whatever, brilliant opportunism from Stephen Bennett, but it was one-way traffic for an awful lot of the game.
Yeah, no, it was a funny type of a game, because when you get chances early doors and you don't take them, a lot of the time they don't repeat themselves. Like Waterford should have been 5, 6, 7 up early on. They weren't in any way economical. You were unbelievably efficient, in fairness. For a team that had been out the previous week, no, early on now, when you needed to be, a lot of those chances flew over, and there was oxygen being sucked from the Waterford end because they were dropping balls short and taking the wrong options, and you were building energy almost with your efficiency. It was very, very impressive, I have to say. And it, like, barring that 50th minute when Waterford got back to you, never really in doubt, as much as it pains me to say it, never really in doubt. And it's funny, like, we've another round to go in Munster, and you're already through, and some of the big hitters, and one of the biggest hitters is still waiting to try and get through, and we'll have a battle to get through. So plenty of gloating going on between rival and neighbouring counties, no doubt.
Yeah, I think it's a worrying time for Waterford, because like they knew they had a double hit to get through to the last round, no more than Cork did as well. But it's just the performance, the manner of it, and like what changes can they make? And they didn't even bring Ozzy on. And there's definitely 2 to 3 starters that you'd be like, well, they need to freshen that up. And like it was a tough day for a couple of players. Like I think Darragh Lyons had a tough day, Desi Hutchinson had a tough day, Paddy Levy had a tough day as well. And like all those lads are good players, and in Desi's case, he's an all-star. But you look at it and be like, well, what can they change for the next day out? And it might be a case for Peter Queally that what we have, we hold. But if that is the case, do you think that in the space of 6, 7 days that they're all of a sudden going to turn around a performance that, I mean, when I look back at Cork, it's like they pulled out a double-barrel shotgun, aimed it down their feet, and, have at it. Because like, as good as Limerick were, Cork could not have been more disastrous for themselves. Like, they had opportunities throughout the game. Like, what you were saying earlier about Waterford, they had their chances early on, and they probably hit a couple of wides too many, which they did. But, like, Cork had so many easy scoring chances. After 30 seconds was it Shane Barrett you'd put your house in it to put that over the bar. Dara Fitzgibbon had a really bad wide during the first half. Patrick Horgan missed 2 gilt-edge goal chances. I mean, for him, they're child's play to put away. The penalty, I mean, then is obviously ridiculous. It was never a penalty. And, Limerick got one of those a couple of years ago. Was it Keane Galvin who was done for them, or maybe someone else? I can't remember. But not in a million years was that a penalty. He just sat on the floor, referee bought it. And, that decided the game. Cork weren't going to come back anyway, because they were too intent on destroying themselves throughout that match. But, like, do you think it's more likely that Waterford can come back in the space of a week, or Cork, who will possibly be down Niall O'Leary and Decky Dalton? Like, who do you think is more likely to turn it around in a week?
Oh, Cork are definitely way more likely, because they've way more credit in the bank as well, and they've had some big performances already this year. Waterford, when you look back on it now, maybe you're thinking, geez, the form of that Clare game doesn't exactly work out particularly well. A Clare team that were playing without their 2 best players probably as well. It's funny though, because I have to look at it a bit deeper at Cork, right? I wonder how much psychological damage there is from that losing that 12-point lead against Clare now when you look back. And forget about the Tipperary game. Forget about it. Dead duck straight away. No, yeah, I'm sure you have. It's gone well back into the memory. But like, with due respect, you cannot start a championship game with 14 players and expected to be, you know, expect to be really competitive. And Tip were as competitive as they were going to be. But Cork they were always going to get goal opportunities. If they took 2 or 3 of them, that was it. If they built up a strong early lead, that was the case. Then you're looking at a complete... So the first day, brilliant first half, brilliant 45, 50 minutes, terrible close to that game. You know, did what they had to do against Tip. Terrible performance against Limerick. So they're fairly on the floor now as well. So it's almost like who actually wants to win this game at the weekend? And obviously both of them want to win it, but they're both coming in really bad form. Like I was amazed with Waterford. Jesus, I saw very little from them outside of that first 10 minutes. There was very little there to suggest, geez, this is do or die. We have to win this because we have a big game coming next week. It didn't look do or die from a Waterford point of view, and I'm sure it was, but the impetus wasn't there, and that was just really surprising. So you kind of have 2 teams sleepwalking into a game of unbelievable magnitude. What about you? Who's most likely to bounce back from your point of view?
I think Cork, but I mean, those issues that they have, or they developed throughout the Limerick game, which is, Niall O'Leary getting injured, Declan Dalton going off, injured very, very early. Robert Downey clearly wasn't right. You could see he was, he was just trying to suck air back into his lungs midway through the first half. He was probably getting the runaround. I'd say the Limerick forwards were thinking, we've got to give this lad the runaround because he's been out for a few weeks, and how much training has he done? I think Cork are more likely to bounce back. If you look at that Waterford team, who are the players that really stood up and showed that, right, we are top level players here? Mark Fitzgerald, he's done that all season. He's absolutely brilliant. Jamie Byrne and Stephen Bennett produced some unbelievable moments, to be fair to him. I thought Michael Breen has been really, really good. Look, I spent 10 years campaigning for him to go full back. But, he definitely gave Breen some trouble there as well. And, that's no mean feat. Some of his scores were just really, really well taken. But outside of that, you just think, what can Waterford do? Once Tipperary settled down on Waterford puckouts after maybe 20 minutes, I just couldn't see where the scores are coming from for Waterford. Even when they scored 6 in a row to bring it back level, there was a couple of frees that were blown for throws, and they actually probably were throws, and a couple of nice scores. But beyond that, it's just they were a little bit rudderless. They look like a team that's on the downward trend. And because we know that even at under 21/20 level, they haven't won a game since, is it 2016?
I think it's since they won the All-Ireland, yeah.
Yeah, that was 2016, I think. You're just wondering, where's the next the next crew of top level talent coming through? And
at least there's a good minor crew, and they were real competitive in the minor final, and they're going to probably have to hang their hat on that realistically. But that could be a long while coming. Yeah,
because when we think back, was it 3 years ago or was it 4 years ago that they absolutely annihilated Cork in that National League final? And it's almost like the team expired that day, that they've never really come back from that. Because, they went into the Munster Championship, things went terribly. Obviously, there was the conscious uncoupling between management and team not long after that. And they just, I don't know, have they ever recovered from that? Or is it just simply the case of what I was saying to you, the athleticism divide isn't there? Caleb Lyons is no longer there. Neil Montgomery, I presume it's injury of some sort. Jack Fagan, some other key lads like Stephen Bennett's been through so many injuries. He probably, as brilliantly and all as he's playing, there's no way he's able to probably train to the level that he might have trained to in the past. Ozzy's obviously having serious trouble getting properly fit. There's a couple of other players I look at and I wonder, is the conditioning, just by looking, is the conditioning where it needs to be? So I think there's a multitude of factors for Waterford here, but it just makes you think, they have a long way to go. And who knows, they could shock us this weekend, but it would be a shock.
I'm surprised though, in fairness. Now, you're not one to be humble in victory or defeat, and you've actually, it's like you just poured it all out there last week, and I thought you just poured out, and you'd be like, you said this, you said that, ooh, tipper this, tipper that. You saw me, I sent you that message the other day. Gar Tui, who was a regular on Tipcast and a regular on Clubber, he got me hook, line, and sinker. He texted me the other day. Did you hear about what happened outside Turles today? And I was like, no, what happened? Well, apparently it was going around that Tipper back. And I was expecting more of it from you, in fairness.
Yeah, but it was kind of, the result was as expected. And I know, like, outside of Tip, maybe it wasn't. But based on the evidence I'd seen all year, I couldn't really see it a way that Tipperary wouldn't win. I never thought they'd hammer Waterford or anything like that. But I just thought like reading the tea leaves, Waterford aren't where they used to be, and Tipperary are in a better spot than they used to be. And like Liam Cahill, like he made a point afterwards where he was saying, a lot of shrewd people thought we'd be gone by May and whatever. And like, as much as we kind of slated the team's performances last year, you've got to give credit for the turnaround now. And some of the players that, he would have had a lot of these players going back maybe 10 years at this point from underage or whatever, and a lot of them are there now. But you look at some of the performances of lads there, like Reece Shelley, who, I've been talking about forever, like his puck outs, Ivan Edel, brave as a lion. He comes out and meets lads as well. Remember, he did that against Peter Duggan the week before.
Yeah.
Robert Doyle has obviously been really good. Owen Connolly, like a couple of those Tipperary backs, you not want to be caught in a dark room with them. Like Owen Connolly looks like he'd kill you in each of without salt. Breen is obviously very aggressive.
Isn't that like the basic requirement almost now to be a county hurler, like, and particularly in that part of the field, you have to be like a stone cold killer. You have to be. And the hurling, obviously, if you have the hurling, brilliant, and that's a big help. But you have to be able to, you have to think, if you're putting a corner forward or full forward in around this lad, like, will he actually survive? Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of the basic requirement.
Yeah, so like you kind of have teams were able to walk through Tipperary before. Now there's a little bit more of like the ball will go through, the man will go through, but the two of them won't go through together. And they're hunting in packs, which I love. And a couple of them more those players that, have come through, like obviously Jake Morris was with Cahill underage as well. And like his performances all year are sort of like, this guy is now the leader of the forward line in particular.
Shano, did you see some of his tackling in the first half, particularly early? Just like hands in like that, just like ferocious kind of stuff. And really, like, I would have seen him as all the silky stuff. And he's doing all the dirty stuff now. And it just, when you see a player like that doing that, it brings everybody with him and with the team as well.
Yeah, and like Andrew Ormond was unbelievable. Like a few years ago, we would have seen him at under 20, and then I think he did his cruciate, so that obviously set him back a nice while. But that performance, like, you could hit any sort of ball into him, surrounded by any number of people. But if it's within his catching radius, it's coming in, he's turning, and he's winning a free or he's getting a score. I mean, even the goal that was scored by Oisin O'Donoghue, the easier pass was to give it to the left for Ormond. He was directly in, and obviously O'Donoghue did brilliantly to finish it. But the amount of times that Ormond was coming on the burst when the ball maybe went inside to John McGrath or Ford or whoever, he was always looking to get on the burst. So when you see him scoring a goal the next day out, which he will do, it's going to be coming on the burst again, because it's a repeat pattern from him. One thing that I would like to change a little bit from Tip is the amount of times that someone, and like I was watching this with frustration, that somebody out the field will have the ball and the Tip inside forward line, which is obviously Jason Ford, John McGrath, and Darren McCarthy. Too often, all of them were 20 yards out. So you would have seen that a few times. That ball would have dropped to Billy Nolan, or or would have just basically gone out over the end line or whatever. But there just isn't someone standing on the 6-yard box often enough for my liking. And
they don't play as deep as Cork do, which is really, really threatening. But just on Cork, Shane, we're going to bring in a special man for you now here. Great to have John Myler with us. John,
John, bye.
Michael, how are you? Sorry about the technological barrier there. I don't know what I'm doing with these things, but anyway, I'm here anyway. So,
John, it's okay. The Tip man wanted about 10 or 15 minutes just to digest the weekend's action. John, I won't read it out loud, but have you any idea what you text me after Tip played Cork in the league final?
No, I can't remember really. But what I would say, Michael, is that up to last Sunday, the Cork were number one in the pecking order on the basis of performances, and I would say that Limerick were two. I hear Stapleton there waffling for the last 10 minutes about Tipperary hurling. 3 or 4 weeks ago, they were pulling the hair out of their head after the league final here in the park. They were doing the same thing 2 weeks later after Cork beat Tip in the championship, and now they're cock-a-hoop because they have 5 points out of 6 and they've qualified. This backdoor thing, or the round robin system, is fantastic because it gives you another chance. It gives you an opportunity. So 3 or 4 weeks ago, Stapleton, I didn't hear him. I didn't see him anywhere. He was pulling the hair out of his head sack Cal and sack the whole lot of them and get into 15. Yes, and that's what you were saying. And they resurrected themselves. In fairness, they got a great result against Limerick. And you know what I mean, the last couple of matches. So Tipperary have qualified, and where Cork have kind of gone backwards in the last two games against Clare and against Limerick last Sunday. So Cork need to resurrect themselves now on Sunday here against Waterford.
Will they have doubts about themselves? No, I'm just wondering, John, do you think there's going to be internal doubts in Waterford now after the way they let such a massive lead, albeit with a red card, slip against Clare, and now the last day getting pummeled like that by Limerick?
No, I would say there was huge disappointment. Even after 5 or 10 minutes, Shane, the you know, it was like the gaps were wide open in the backs through the middle. Limerick came straight through. But there was huge disappointment, like even leaving the ground out, you know what I mean? There wasn't a word in the Cork crowd going out. There will be doubt. Obviously, there will be doubt. And there will be a few injuries and things like that. But Pat Ryan had to say on Sunday evening at 6 o'clock after the game, look, that's the benefit of the round robin. We've another game against Waterford next Sunday, beat Waterford on Sunday, and we're into the Munster final. And that's the here. And that's the benefit of the round robin. I said to you, Shane, there about Tip losing here in the league final and losing in the first round of the championship. And, you know, people were going up the N8, up to Thurles and wherever and saying, Jesus, like, what are we doing? And now Tipperary are after getting their act together and they're positive. They have 5 points. You know what I mean? So they're going to be in the Munster final or in the quarter final or whatever. So fantastic achievement for them. Cork will be the same on Sunday if they beat Waterford. So I think that's the key. And it's a bit like the soccer. You see that last night, like Spurs beating Man United. They have another match Sunday. You know, my young fella used to always say to me, Dad, it's over. Move on. Who's next? You know, we have a match on Sunday. And I think that's the focus here. Forget about the Limerick match and we beat Waterford and then we're into the Munster fight. No, you can't just 100% forget about the performance against Limerick because that performance wasn't good enough. So they need to, you know, change their mindset psychologically and get ready for Sunday.
It's a massive game. Jeez, a massive game. So much on the line. Where do you see them bouncing back, John, or where do you see it? Like, in one sense, you're probably lucky to be coming up against a team that aren't exactly flying high at the minute as well.
But there was nothing wrong. You know, I know Waterford were beaten last Sunday, but they had 16 wides, right? You know what I mean? And they didn't score for the last, from the 51st minute on. They didn't score for the last 25 minutes, 20 minutes of the second half. That's not acceptable. That's not good enough at this level. But, you know, Waterford and they'll be down there and saying, look, we'll get one game out of the Bennetts. We'll get one game out of Jamie Byrne, one game out of Austin Gleeson, Tadhg de Búrca, all those. And if they can do that and just one game in the park, it'll be, you know, the pitch will be fantastic. There'll be 40,000 people there. So it's up to Waterford to come with their A game. Cork have 1 or 2 injuries, and so it's up to Pat Ryan to sort out those injuries and then, you know, put in Damien Cahalan or Melrick to cover the backs and things like that. So I wouldn't be mad for changing the whole team right like that. Couple of changes. Be positive, lads. Beat Waterford, Munster final. That's the bottom line here.
Vernie, though, I'm looking at that Waterford team and they're quite wedded to having Tadhg de Búrca sit back. But yet that was probably arguably the thing tactically that cost them. So, you know, that's not down to de Búrca. He's playing the way he's told. Can Waterford beat Cork by having a man sit back? Because we saw what Andrew Ormond was allowed to do when it was a case of, we'll pass him off to a midfielder, someone else will pick him up. Well, like, no better team than Cork to pick you off if you try and let an extra man sit back.
Oh, they'll absolutely destroy you. And that's the thing.
So
I just
what did
wonder,
they do?
Yeah, I wonder, like, with a bit of caution be thrown to the wind here. I wonder, will Ozzy be in from the start? And it's like, forget about everything that's come before this. We need to win this game, so we might throw him in from the start. Maybe they'll just play straight up. If you try and play straight up and try and beat Cork in the shootout, that's a fairly difficult thing as well. And
you're making the point, Michael. You're making the point there about Tadhg de Búrca, and you're making the point about, you know, Kyle Hayes last Sunday was excellent. And you would have said one of the best hurlers at the moment, Dara Fitzgibbon, would take Hayes to the cleaners if Hayes backs off. And Dara didn't. So, you know what I mean? That Cork will have a problem with Jamie Byrne at 11 then. You know, how do you? It's up to the 211s really to mark one another, not to give them that space. You know, so look, it'll be competitive in that area. But you know, if Cork get a shootout, certainly they'll win the game. That's, you know, but I'm expecting massive game from the Bennetts. From, you know, what Shane said there about Ozzy starting straight away. I think so. All the eggs into one basket. Let's go. Let's do it. You know what I mean?
If you were a manager, John, is that the way? Would you just roll the dice there? Because, like,
no, I had that situation, Michael, in 18 or in 19. Sorry, and Stapleton was probably down the park waffling again, but Tipperary beat us well down the park in the first game, and we went up to Limerick the second day. And we beat...
John, I always wondered, how was your centre back for when you played Limerick from Mill Street? I can't think of
Mark Ellis.
Mark Ellis.
Yes. How was he not in the squad the previous week?
He was injured.
I don't think he was. I don't think that's correct.
He was injured, and he was carrying an injury, and he had an operation over the winter.
I thought he played for Mill Street the previous week, no?
Look, stop waffling there. You're going.
Everyone's waffling except you.
Well, like, look, but like you're going back 6 years, but you know, Tim was centre back in the game against Tip down the park, and he was poor now, and he was poor last Sunday as well. That the whole middle was wide open and that, and we had to change one or two things, and we made 2 or 3 changes. We put Downey into Mark Road, Hegarty, Ellis went to centre back, but Ellis was a colossal figure. In fairness to him now, you know what I mean. So look, a couple of changes now and calm down, and we'll be fine here on Sunday.
John, do you think that Limerick are totally back to where they were, or do you think part of it is Cork just imploded in that performance? Like you mentioned Tim O'Mahony there, I couldn't believe it when he got himself blocked down by Kyle Hayes early on. It was so telegraphed. Shane Barrett putting one wide, Horgan missing 2 for him, simple goal chances. It was just like Cork imploded.
Yeah, certainly. You know, like the first 10 minutes, and I was looking down and I said, Jesus, it's like the Red Sea is wide open. Limerick were coming through at 140 miles an hour, and, you know, midfield didn't perform. And, like, look, it was one of those days. But if you look at Limerick's performance, Shane, there, I thought they were excellent in the first half. They got very sloppy for the first 10, 15 minutes of the second half. They were, you know, losing ball, Cork picked up ball. Cork got the score back to 10 points. And I remarked to the lads with me at the game and said, Jesus, Cork get a goal or two here. We're, you know what I mean, we're in this fight. And then there was the stupid, it's a bit like Barrett getting sent off against Clare, you know, it was just silly really on his behalf. And then I think it was Ganam was fouled for the penalty up at the top end, you know, and that really decided the game then. You know what I mean? That Limerick had it back to 13. But if Cork had come in there and got a point or two and got it down to manageable figures, 7, 8, 9, something like that, then. But, you know, I think there was a good first half in Limerick, and then they finished strong then after that penalty then, and you know, to bring it to 16, 15 points in the end. But, you know, I think that the other item really was that Limerick had 2 weeks to prepare for this match. I think Cork had 3 weeks. And as a manager, you hate the 3 weeks, I think, because it's that 1 week that, what do we do? You know what I mean? It's like the 4 weeks years ago there for the All-Ireland semi-finals and the All-Ireland final. And, you know what I mean? You get too long to do it. And what are we doing? And I think that was a cruel, you know, one of the issues with Cork, really. And, you know, Downey being injured as well. And, you know what I mean? There were critical areas, you know.
John, do you think this defeat might be a bad thing in the long run? You've found out a few deficiencies potentially. You know that you can't be off it on a given day as well. You've also poked the bear from last year, which is a big worry. Yeah,
but someone said to me last night that you know, the difference between a tap on the back and a kick in the arse is 6 inches. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Cork were getting all the credits. Cork were getting all the you know, well done and all that down here, and they just needed that kick in the arse, really. I say, look, lads, you're not as good as what you think you were. And, you know, they played really well down here against Tip in the league final and against Tip in the first round of the championship. Then there was a bit of a stutter then in Ennis, and that, you know, that really was the start of it. And then, like, Jesus, then to go face Limerick then, who were tearing for road because Cork had beaten them twice last year. Kylie had come out and said, like, we need the whole of Limerick there. And we need every Limerick person in Limerick in the Gaelic grounds last Sunday roaring and shouting. And I actually noticed like that even in the crowd that were to my left, because Cork was at one batch, and then Limerick, all Limerick people next to us. Jesus, they were vociferous and they were noisy and they were giving it holly to Cork, like, you know. But 2 weeks' time there'll be another game now, and we'll see.
Oh, I love it! I love it. John, if Cork were to play Tipperary in the championship again, how would it go? 15-on-15.
That's not relevant, Michael. That's not relevant.
It's a hypothetical question, John.
Hey, hold on. It'll be relevant in Croke Park later in the summer.
Oh, I like your style. I like your style. No, look, it's not relevant because Cork have to focus on Waterford, and that's the key game on Sunday. And Cork need to get a win to get into the Munster final and exercise that game last Sunday. And then you'll have a game in 2 weeks' time in Limerick. Now, you know, I'm looking at the Waterford team, and I sat down this morning, I look at the Waterford team, I'm looking at the Bennetts, I'm looking at Jamie Byrne, I'm looking at Tyke de Burka, Austin Gleeson. These are some of the best hurlers that have come out of Waterford, and they're some of the best hurlers, you know, in Ireland over the last 5 or 10 years. And, you know, Waterford will put it up to Cork. I've no doubt about that. And Quealy will have them, you know, tearing for road. So it's going to be competitive. It's going to be helter-skelter. And, you know what I mean? If Waterford get a lead or something like that, it could be very difficult to get them back. Because, you know, sometimes like that, when you're in it, your confidence can kick in or your confidence can go. And Cork would say an early goal, I would say an early goal, things like that. Just settle the team down. Let's go for it here.
We shouldn't forget it was only a year ago that Cork came down to Walsh Park and Waterford beat them by a goal in the championship. So there's not, you know, their previous meeting was a Waterford victory, Shane.
Very, very harsh black card and penalty that day, though.
True enough, yeah. And they got sending off the same day as well, didn't they?
Yeah, was it Kieran Joyce?
Yeah.
Or was it Damien Cahalane?
No,
yeah.
Yeah,
Shane,
black card.
I know you're under pressure for time. Any other tip propaganda you'd like to throw out before you leave?
Probably loads, but you know, I think the under 20s as well coming to the boil a little bit helps. Like Oisin O'Donoghue, who's getting great exposure with the 20s, and he carried his form into, you know, he was obviously just brimming with confidence when he came on. 2 shots, 2 scores.
You think he looks like the real deal potentially?
Yeah,
going forward?
I'd be like, okay, so the All Ireland under 20 final is coming up Saturday week. I don't think it's been fully fixed, but it's going to be at Nolan Park as far as I know. And I think he'll play that. And then Tipperary, we're all expecting Tipperary to play the Joe McDonagh team or one of the Joe McDonagh teams. I'd be thinking, assuming he comes through the under 20 okay, has a decent game, trains well, throw him in from the start. Let's see how he goes and, you know, add to that competition. Because I think Tipperary could do with even more energy in the forward line. And he's showing now that he can play on the inside forward line, not just the half forward line. Other than that, Sam O'Farrell as well. Like we saw last week, the difference he had with the 20s in the Munster final. He's coming to the boil nicely. And then just before I go, I know I'm going to be accused of bias and stuff like that, which I always am.
Never.
John had said that too. But I just think I would imagine we're going to see Sean Brennan back in goals for Dublin this weekend because, look, obviously, you know, I heard of him for a long time and I've seen what he can do. And I just think that Dublin need a bit of a change in there. Eddie Gibbons is obviously very, very good, very lovely striker of the ball. But I just think just to bring a bit more assuredness to the goals, I would expect that Sean, who's only been given 1 appearance this year, I think it was the last league game, and he saved the penalty and played unbelievably. I just think they might need to do a little tweak there. It's not that the other lad isn't doing well or isn't good, but it's just I think he brings that extra bit of experience.
Yeah, well, I was down in Nolan Park the other day, and I could not believe the goals they conceded. The one at Billy Ryan's last one was fair enough. It was a bit blistering kind of shot. Maybe he should have been fouled further out. But the 4 goals in the first half, I don't know. Did you see them, John? They were literally like if you're over an under 12 team and a team conceded these goals, 2 lads going up for the one ball breaking in around the square, and you know, Conor Burke dropped the first one. TJ Reid had a hook shot, and Gibbons obviously was expecting a pile driver, went to ground, and the ball just trickled over the line. And they did amazingly actually to come back, considering all the mistakes that were made. But this is a huge game against Galway at the weekend. Winning, they're in the Leinster final, chance to atone for last year's horror show in the Leinster final as well. And obviously, buying herself more time, etc., less games and that. So it'll be interesting to see whether a change is made there. I get where you're coming from, Shane. I don't think there will be a change, and I think he might double down on Gibbons. But whether that's the right call or not, I'm not sure. But I would have thought Brennan was a seasoned keeper at this stage, and he was your number one for the foreseeable future. And to me, he's brilliant. He puts the ball through an eye of a needle as well. Very good shot stopper too. Maybe prone to the odd mistake, but from time to time. But most keepers are prone to mistakes from time to time as well. So that's going to be interesting to see. But I hope ye two boys meet again at some stage. John in one sentence kicked it down the line and said that was not worth talking about. In another sentence, he said there'd be another game at Limerick in 2 weeks' time.
He did.
No, but like, look, we would have said that a couple of weeks ago after the league final here and then the match against Tip, and everyone was going to be focusing on that, and everybody ignored Limerick. Limerick have been successful over the last 6 or 7 years, winning All Irelands and that. They're not going anywhere. And it is actually, like to see Kyle Hayes, Garrod Hegarty and those, they're getting better. I thought man of the match last Sunday was Cian Lynch. I thought he was outrageous at times with his passing, and he took out players out of the equation altogether. I thought he was unbelievable last Sunday, and Limerick are there, and he's introduced. I was on last week somewhere, and I was saying about the Kiley had introduced Shane O'Brien, fellas like that who are definitely making a contribution. Then he has subs on Peter Casey and that coming on to Copperfast and things like that. So Limerick have kind of their basic 20 and they're managing that, and the usuals like Gillan flying, Dermot Byrne going well. Do you know what I mean? So look, focus on Sunday, Shane, and don't be getting carried away with other matches which are irrelevant at the moment.
Final word on Limerick. I
obviously think they're now the number one team. And last week I was saying Cork. I still think Cork will win the All Ireland because I don't think Cork can play as poorly as that again. And I think Limerick can play as good as that again. But if Cork don't shoot themselves in the foot, don't throw away as many scoring opportunities, get everybody fully fit, including Downey, and obviously you have to get Dalton back and Niall O'Leary. I think Cork can get back to the summit again. But that was just it's a bit like maybe Clare last year when they collapsed against Limerick. They were able to recover from that, and they probably needed a game or two to get fully back up to speed. But I do think Cork can do that. I think they can. Yeah,
they will, and you'll have 40,000 in the park Sunday. Cork will get behind the team, and the team really needs Cork support now. They really need that support from everybody in Cork to get behind them now and say, look, okay, we apologise for the performance last Sunday against Limerick. We're not that bad, and don't leave. And really, really come out and support us on Sunday against Waterford, and that's key. And I think you'll see a massive support for Cork on Sunday, and that's critical. And they'll get behind the team. And if the team, were to go a point, 2 points up, you know what I mean, they'll be mad supporting them.
Shane, we'll talk to you next time Tipperary are playing. All right.
All right. See you, gents.
All
the best. In the back door. Where's he gone? Where's he gone? He's always going,
He's running. He's always running. John, just on Limerick, you were talking about Cian Lynch there. My God, when he's in the full flow, isn't he just an absolute joy to watch?
I thought, he's the conductor of the orchestra, really. He was going one way towards the city, and then the next minute there was a little flick over the top of his head, and it just took out probably the whole Cork half-back line midfield. I think it's a bit like Messi and these guys, what do they do? And you say, Asher, they only pass the ball or things like that. But what Cian does is so simple. And you know what I mean? His touch on the ball, when he's in tight spaces, he's able to offload the ball. He's able to get a pass out. And it's always seems to be the right pass. And I actually watched them in the warm-up. And they were using a square drill, about 20-yard square. And there was 30 passes within it with two fellas inside in the middle. They never touched the ball, the two guys in the middle. But the guys on the outside never dropped the ball. They never dropped the ball. And the ball was hit hard at fellas now.
It was like a piggy in the middle drill, John, isn't it?
Yeah, the two guys in the middle trying to get it off. But it was their touch, their hand, their coordination, their eye. Everything was spot on. They looked sharp. They looked focused on it. And Cian is definitely, you know what I mean, conducting that orchestra from the backs. He links up the backs, the transition between backs and forwards, as he links it up and he makes the movement and he makes the passes, things like that.
Was that as good as we've seen him, John?
Cian Lynch?
No, as good as Limerick have been since 2018.
No, certainly not. I thought they were very good in the first half. As I said earlier, I thought they got sloppy for the first 10 or 12 minutes. I'd say Kiley was pulling the hair out of his head in the sideline. And Cork got it, as I said, Cork got it back to 10 points. And a goal, you know, if Cork had got a goal at that stage, whereas, you know, Galan was pulled down at the bottom end in the city end, and, you know, again, penalty, would you put it over the bar or go for goal? He went for the goal. You know what I mean? That was their confidence. Limerick were confident of beating Cork last Sunday and said, we are the All-Ireland champions, or, you know what I mean, for the last number of years and things like that. But he took it well and he put it in the back of the net and fair dues to him. You know,
I get the sense from you that you think it would be, well, obviously a hell of a lot tighter if they meet again, and you think that maybe people are losing the run of themselves a small bit on the Limerick performance.
But like, if you sit down and, you know, you see in the paper every Monday morning, you see an analysis of player ratings. You couldn't rate any of the Cork hurlers last Sunday. You could not give them a rating. You know, I wouldn't go so far now as some of the Madrid papers sometimes give ratings fairly low.
Like Keep in France often do like 0 or 1. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's not on at all. But there was no Cork player really performed anywhere near the level required, and certainly against Limerick, that you know you need to be on your game. You need to take every opportunity that's there, and you need to be competitive. Cork weren't competitive; they weren't aggressive. You know, it was just one of those days, and we've all had them, Michael. We've all played them and say, "What happened there? I don't know." And shit happens sometimes, and you just forget about it. My young fella always said to me, he said, "Dad, forget about it. We've a match Sunday or a match Saturday. That's it. That's our next focus." And I think that's the critical. And Cork will be hammering that home during this week now, Tuesday night, Thursday night, and then Sunday in the park.
Well, as you said earlier, that's the beauty of the round robin. You always get another chance. There's either a chance to keep the foot to the throat looming, or there's a chance to bounce back looming.
Yeah.
Just, John, they're gone out of the championship, but they still have a game to play. Clare were disappointing this year. There's no point in saying any different. The wheels have come off a small bit, but they were missing key personnel as well.
Injuries in the full back line. Tony Kelly was injured or sick, and then Shane O'Donnell. Like you know, like Shane O'Donnell missing is kind of, you know, half the Clare forward line, in the sense the influence he had on Clare. The influence he had on Clare winning the All-Ireland last year, a massive player, and to be without him. And then Tony Kelly missed one of the games. He missed sick.
Waterford, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, Conor Cleary injured, the full back line. You know, Conlon was struggling during the league, and they hadn't a great league and things like that. And maybe he should, you know, that he should have blooded a few players. But look, you know, it's easy to say things like that in hindsight. And, you know, they just struggled with injuries. I think that's and that's not, you know what I mean, given Loan the benefit of the doubt, but you know, they had too many injuries really, and especially Shane O'Donnell, because he's such an influence last year, and Tony Kelly missing a critical game at the stage where they needed a win. So yeah. You know what I mean, I think, you know, Clare just have to regroup. They won the minor All-Ireland there a couple of years ago, and they've fell us out of that. And go back to the point, Stapleton was on there about Tip playing Kilkenny, you know, on Sunday week or Saturday week in the under-21 All-Ireland. Like, they need to bring in more players out of that under-21 team, because the likes of the McGraths and that are kind of getting a bit older and things like that. You need to blood them quicker. You know, you can see that with Cork, that they've young players there really, like Barrett and Connolly and those, you know. So
just on Clare, John, they won't be talked about much, but how important is Sunday's game for them, that it's really competitive and that they show up, that they don't wave the white flag and are not beating double digits?
I don't think they'll wave the white flag, like, but Jesus, like, go on playing Limerick. You know what I mean? Limerick have already qualified for the Munster final, you know. and I'd say that Limerick might, give one or two players a break, try one or two players in the subs, and you know what I mean. But I think Limerick will be going for the win. I think that's critical to them. And like the way they played last Sunday was impressive. And Limerick could turn it on. So Clare need to be aware, and to be aware of that Limerick are coming to town and what they're going to do. So they need to stand up as well. And Loan probably needs to blood one or two fellas for next year.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. These matches are difficult as for players. You've nothing to play for really, but you know what I mean. But the fact that it's Limerick versus Clare will come out and play. I've no doubt about that.
John, a lot of different comments in around Kilkenny in particular. Had a good win in the under-20s last night. They're obviously playing Tip in that All-Ireland under-20 final. They've there's no point in saying any different. They have an easier passage to the knockout stages and potentially to the last four than any of the Munster teams. Where do you sit on Kilkenny at the minute? They're definitely, you'd imagine they're going to be fairly fresh come one of those big knockout games, be it a quarter-final, semi-final, potentially final.
I was talking to a good friend of mine, Ned Buggy from Wexford recently, and Ned said to me, he said, beware the cats, he said. Everyone perceives the Leinster Championship to be weaker than the Munster Championship. But, forgive me now from the records in that, but the last few years, the All-Ireland champions have come out of Munster, really. Okay, it's been dominated by Limerick.
Since 2017, yeah, since Galway won, and that was the Connacht team, obviously, but playing Leinster.
Look, it's been dominated by, so that's only a load of shite, really, in the sense about, they have an easier way and they have an easier pathway. Look at the matches that have happened here in the Munster Championship, and you're found out in 5 or 10 minutes, like Cork were found out last Sunday. You know what I mean? And in those matches, Waterford to a lesser extent last Sunday, where they'll have highlighted they didn't score for the last 25 minutes. They had a load of words. You're punished. You're punished more in the Munster Championship, and as a result of that, then you can learn. And you can learn, and you're more ready then for the All-Ireland semi-finals, quarter-finals, whatever comes up next. And I think that's the benefit of the Munster Championship, really. I'm disappointed there with Offaly and with Antrim in the Leinster Championship. You know what I mean? I think they've been poor. Again, disappointed with my own native county, Wexford, with Rossi. I
might just chat to you a bit about Wexford, John. It's like it all kind of hinged on the Dublin game, didn't it? And some of it hinged on that penalty decision as well, to be honest.
Yeah, but it hinged on him losing. Rossi lost 3 or 4 players. He lost Liam Oak, McGovern,
Dermot O'Keefe, Matt O'Hanlon, yeah.
You can't. It's a bit like having Lohan on here now. Say, well, if we'd had Tony Kelly, if we'd had Shane O'Donnell, and we had the full back line, we'd be fucking flying. But we lost. Wexford have lost those players, and you can't just replace them with an under-21. Like Stapleton was waffling on there about the under-21s in great success. You probably need 3 years of blood on an inter-county panel to be ready for senior championship. And Wexford, Rossi, in fairness to me, brought in a lot of young players in that. But you know what I mean? They haven't qualified for the Leinster Championship for the knockout. So it's a disappointing year. In a nutshell.
Do you think there's potentially some leaner times coming? Like Lee Chin has been brilliant this year, but he only has a couple of years left, and he's talked about that. And
Lee is 32, and he's been there carrying the forwards. And now suddenly that, you know what I mean, that, as I said to you, like those fellas leaving and that, so it could be lean. And Kilkenny have no one's even talking about them or what they're doing or what they're not doing, but they'll always be competitive. Dublin with O'Callaghan are doing well, and I don't know about Galway. I haven't really studied the Leinster Championship, to be honest. You know what I mean? You'd be looking at it down here, sure, it takes up all your time. Really.
Can I just ask you about that? Do you think, I know you're a big advocate for playing a lot of games in kind of quick succession and loads of games, but do we have enough time even to digest what's going on here now? You've made a comment there, and I'd say that's a comment shared by a lot of people. Munster is dominating the conversation, dominating your time almost. There's a lot less time to go and digest. There's loads of good stuff going on in Leinster. Offaly were brilliant against Dublin. That was a belter of a game. Offaly Wexford last week was a great game. Kilkenny Dublin last week was a mad type of a game, but good game as well. Wexford Dublin was a brilliant game too. But there's less eyes on these games. Do you think there's enough time to digest all that's going on at the minute?
Yeah, there's enough. You have enough time. I think they should be playing games every week. I don't see any reason why not. And have a game.
I think player welfare might come into it a small bit.
Come on, give me a break. Give me a break. Man City played Saturday in the cup final. They played Tuesday night. You know what I mean?
There might be a small bit of a difference now. I don't think any of them boys went and stood in front of a classroom of kids on the Monday or went into their accountancy office.
Summed it up well there by, all the teachers and all that. You know what I mean? Then go home at 3 o'clock and go to bed for 3 hours and then go training.
John, sorry now. I was a teacher in a former life. Unless you've done it, you can't comment on it. I tell you, if we didn't have the holidays, nobody be teaching, because it is an exhausting job, no matter what anybody says.
But in my time, when I was playing hurling in the 80s, like you fellas farming and that, like Frank Cummins and all those, and there were physical jobs. We weren't in the gym. These guys are looking after themselves. They're inside in the gyms and things like that. So, look, I would have games every week, less training, more matches. People want to go to matches. I've been at, 4 or 5 Cork matches here. We've had full houses. The amount of young people in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, people want to see matches. They don't want breaks, and they don't want 2 weeks off and no matches. But to go back to the main argument, Michael, the emphasis has been on Munster because the games are tougher, they're harder, they're more exciting. And that's what people want to watch. And you know what I mean? The results in Leinster, like that, Offaly and Antrim. Oh, okay, Offaly, we thought we're coming with the under-21s, but they haven't really broken in there. And Antrim have gone backwards. And that's it in a nutshell. And Dublin have stepped up where Wexford were. That's really it in a nutshell. Because you would expect Micheál to do well in Galway, and Kilkenny will always be Kilkenny. They'll be thereabouts. They'll be in the shake-up. So when it gets down then to the quarter-final, semi-final, we'll have a discussion then about whether Leinster hurling is better than Munster hurling and vice versa. And that's really it in a nutshell.
Did you see Sambo McNaughton's comments, John, about Davy Fitz in the Independent this morning? No,
I don't. Go ahead.
Can I read them out to you?
Go on.
Yeah. So obviously Antrim haven't been going particularly well. Sambo just said his first interview, he totally disrespected my club coaches, every club coach in the county, when he said, "I'm going to teach Antrim hurlers to walk again." Why does he have to disrespect what's gone before him all the time? That seems to be his go-to. I've arrived now and I'm doing this right. Everybody else that has been here before doesn't know what they're doing. Considering he's such an experienced manager who's been around a long time, and he's been around RTE a long time as well in social media, some of the interviews he does are just plain stupid. They are totally mind-boggling, throwing players under the bus, throwing teams under the bus, totally disrespecting the players, and there's absolutely no need for it. To get the best out of anyone, you don't insult them. That's not how to get the county behind you and the supporters behind you either. Every single person I meet says the Davy thing is not working, and if he sees this interview, he'll come out and use me as an excuse. Every interview he does just winds me up more and more. To come out and say that I've got to teach Antrim hurlers to walk again, it's bull SH1T. It's disrespectful to everyone in the county, and it's just not on. His rant about a referee or linesman last week after the Galway match, that's not the time or place to do that. Our focus should have been totally on the Offaly game afterwards. It shouldn't have been talking all this SH1T about referees and referees don't like me. I have an old saying that if you have a problem, you're better to look in the mirror than look out the window.
Yeah, 100%.
What do you make of that?
No, Sambo is right. There was an unmerciful amount of waffle during the week there about Johnny Murphy, and Johnny Murphy doesn't like me. And look, I don't. You know what I mean? It's an unmerciful waffle. That was terrible during the week. If
you were in the dressing room, John, as a player, I don't know. I think it's very easy just put your head down and go and say, "Listen, we didn't perform today. That's on us. We'll do everything possible to be ready for Offaly next week." And the comments are not favourable or good towards players either.
You have to have, Michael, you have to have characters in a dressing room. you have to have characters in the dressing room, and every dressing room needs 3 or 4 characters in that will stand up to a manager and will stand up to the players and say to players, you know what I mean? Look, that's not acceptable. That's not good enough. So I would have expected 1 or 2 of the Cork hurlers to stand up in the dressing room last Sunday after the Limerick match and say, lads, this is not acceptable. This is not good enough. We need to turn this around now, lively, quick, or, you know, and all that.
That's actually like a manager wants that, doesn't he? He wants players to take the bull by the horns.
But as players, you know what I mean? Effectively, players play the matches and win the games. Managers, you know, manage around. Managers create the environment in which those players are able to do that. That's what you're looking for managers to do. But players have to take responsibility. They've got to stand up and say, you know what I mean, this is what we're doing. This is not acceptable. This is acceptable. And, you know what I mean, I knew there from before that Declan Hannon would be one of the main guys in Limerick, where he was leading that. You know what I mean? Cian Lynch leads by example and things like that. So you need guys, you need characters in dressing room say, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, and we need to push on. But you know what? Sambo is coming out there with you know, it's look, they've had a poor year, Antrim, and you know, they probably need one of their own. You know what I mean? I'd be very friendly with Neil McManus now over the years, and you know, you talk and you know, they have a small number, they have a small base and things like that. But you knew when he was gone, it's going to be extremely difficult to fill Neil's boots, and you know what I mean, to get good players in there. And they're struggling with numbers. And look, I've been involved with Kerry for 30 years, the same thing in Kerry, and you know, they have a huge match against Westmeath on Saturday. You know, they need to win that match. So look, it's difficult. And go back to the main point then, Michael, that the difference between the top teams and the middle teams is getting wider, and that's worrying as well.
Yeah, that Offaly Antrim game is a massive game for both teams. Antrim stayed up last year. Chris Nolan was sent off, and that was kind of helped to turn that game in their favour a bit. Both Antrim and Offaly need to be in the Leinster Championship, so that's a huge game, particularly for my own county. It's a massive game. John, a comment coming in here from Fio Innes. He says, people leaving a hurling game early is like leaving Sunday Mass early. They're not true believers. I believe you had a few leaving early last Sunday from what I could see in videos and stuff going around. Would you stay to the bitter end?
Did I? No. I found that hard now. And Jesus, Michael, I was watching it, and after 2 minutes, I said, Christ, the Red Sea is down on the pitch. The middle was wide open, and Limerick were coming through like trains. And they had about, I'd say, 3 or 4 goal opportunities in the first 5 minutes. And I said, "Geez, this is wide open. This is wide open." And you know what I mean? Cork were up the field. They were playing against the wind. Their forwards were up too far up the field. They should have come back probably 20 or 30 yards. But it's easy to say that in hindsight. It's easy to say that up in the stand. We can all say that. But it was, and it was Cian Lynch was orchestrating the whole thing. Like there was one ball, probably 30 yard. I think it was Flanagan or Gillan was going through at 100 miles an hour, and he just caught it and put it away. So it was hard watching on Sunday. I did leave before the game, Michael. I've no doubt saying that, you know.
At least you're honest. At least
you get a bit of, but like, look, you know, you get a bit of stick, but sure, I'm sure Stapleton got that stick for the first 2 Tipperary matches, the league final and the next one. But like, look, that's the way it goes. And Cork people were hurt. And Cork people will want this team now to change the mindset, to change the narrative there on Sunday against Waterford. And that's what Pat Ryan will be driving there. Everyone will have forgotten about, you know, the Limerick match or whatever in the next one. And you go back, like, Limerick were hurting after Cork denying them a possibility of going for 5 in a row. They beat them here in the park on the Saturday night with Hoggy's goal. So Limerick had had a cause, had a raison d'etre to beat Cork last Sunday. Now, if Cork get over Waterford, they'll have a reason to beat Limerick in Limerick.
It's funny when the hunter becomes the hunted, or the hunted becomes the hunter, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, but you've got to stand up, and you've got to stand up now and show courage and show vision and show leadership. And that's where you need the key players now. Who are your key players now in the dressing room on Sunday? Who are your key players that are really going to drive this forward in the next day or two? Because Cork have a couple of injuries, and that's a small worry. That's a small niggle in the back of your head. Who's going to replace Niall O'Leary? Who's going to replace Dalton? You know, are you going to get those? Like Brian Roach was the first sub in last Sunday, you know, and Robbie O'Flynn was the last sub in. Like Luke Meade didn't come in. So yeah, look, Pat has got to get this right. This you have to get this right. There's no back door here. Cork win during the Munster final. They lose, they're out, and it'll have fierce ramifications.
They have previous, though, John, in fairness, of turning around bad situations. Like that Limerick game last year, they played above anything we had seen last year when they had to. So you'd be hopeful that when they have to and when the need is the greatest, that they'll find another level. Yeah,
but you, as I said to you there, you've Niall is missing, Dalton is missing. Downey has struggled for the last 3 or 4 weeks since the first tip championship match. So like they're obvious things now to take into account. But like Cork will be tested with their panel, and Damien could come in at centre back instead of Downey and that. You know what I mean? So Jared Miller could come into the corner for Niall O'Leary. Brian Roach, Luke Meade could come in for Dalton as well. So Seamus came on last Sunday and at half time and he got 2 points. So he should be fitter now after a few nights training anyway. So look, it's all to play for, and as I say, you need to be wary of the Bennetts. You need to be wary of Austin. Jamie Barron, Ty the Booker. These guys can hurl. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely no doubt about that. So we can beat Cork. You look back at years of hurling championship matches and say, where we've won a match or whatever, and nobody expected us to win it. Nobody expected Limerick to beat Cork by 16 points last Sunday. Nobody.
Yeah, that's going to be a fascinating game, in fairness. Just quickly, John, I know you haven't seen too much of Leinster. Dublin and Galway is basically like a de facto Leinster semi-final. The winner plays Kilkenny.
Yeah.
What have you made of the bits you've seen of Galway? They obviously played your own fellas in the league as well. When they've been good, they've been decent enough. Geez, when they've been bad, they've been brutal. And they were brutal against Kilkenny, but they've bounced back pretty well since.
Yeah, like Galway haven't been consistent. That's my point with them. And Micheál has done well there, in fairness. Look, they'll be in the Leinster final or All-Ireland quarter final. So he's got his first, your first emphasis really is to be in the top 3 in Munster and Leinster, qualify for the quarter final, qualify for the provincial final. Then it starts then after that. So after this Sunday now, we'll all know who's in the quarter final, who's in the semi-final or whatever. And I think that's the next time then you sit down with your players Monday night and say, right lads, we have a quarter final or we have a semi-final, and we're going to train accordingly for that. And look, Galway and Dublin will be awkward for anybody. There's no doubt about that. And I saw Na Fianna win the club against Stars in Croke Park. Callan has done a good job there. But when it gets then to playing one of the Munster teams, bar Kilkenny, I think then, the Munster Championship really has an advantage in that, because you've been tested and you've been put through the mill, things like that.
You're not going to answer me. I know you're not. But in case I'm not chatting you over the next couple of months, who wins the All-Ireland?
Well, Limerick are in number 1 position at the moment. I think Cork are in the 2nd position. I think it's Kilkenny and Tipperary in 3. I think in that order. I would have said previous to last Sunday, I think that Cork would be 1 and Limerick would be 2. You reverse that on the basis of last Sunday. And I think that,
is that any harm for you?
No, like look, somebody's it's no harm to Cork, but it might be harm to Limerick and say, like, oh, now we're the favourites. You know what I mean? On the basis of one game. On the basis of the league, Cork were seen to be flying and things like that. So on that basis, then they were favourites for the All Ireland. But I think that taking that pressure off Cork would be good for Cork. And he said now they can go and hurl now on Sunday. But you have to do it now, Michael. This is real now. Shit or get off the pot now this time. That's it now. You know what I mean? This is real on Sunday. You have to win your match, both in Leinster and in Munster. And on that basis, then we can talk on Monday morning. Where are we now?
I think the great thing about Munster, John, is we think we know, but we don't know, and that's the great thing, is that you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how Cork are going to react. You don't know, is there a bit more in Waterford? Is there a big performance?
You sat down and you're always saying to me way back in February or March, what are your three? And you know what I mean? Like, nobody foresaw it clear. Like, you know what I mean? Nobody foresaw the injuries or things like that. Cork were flying early. Limerick, puffing away in the league, really. Waterford. They still haven't really come out of Munster in terms of the provincial round robin series and things like that. So, look, there's a lot of questions in Munster, but you always looked at Leinster and said Kilkenny, Galway, and neither Dublin or Wexford. So Dublin have replaced Wexford this year, and that's it. Like, you knew Antrim and Offaly weren't going to be at the top table. They weren't, and we knew that. So whereas you probably might say on the basis of the last couple of years that Waterford wouldn't be really competing with Limerick and that. But we'll see on Sunday.
Good man. John, I'll give you a text Sunday evening depending on how we get on, all right?
Yeah, sure. You might get Stapleton send a text to her. He'll be probably in Spain or Portugal, I suppose, like looking forward to the All-Ireland final.
Go on, John, I'll talk soon. Thanks a million.
He'll be sorting out Quinta del Lago for Tipperary training,
Good man. Talk soon, John. Thanks a million.
Good luck. God bless.
Cheers. Great stuff from John, as always there. Delighted to have Cian Johnson, who we haven't had on in a while. Cian, how are you getting on?
All good, Michael. All good. I think this is the best podcast in the country for getting a lad on when their team's going well. You had Stapleton last week with Tip, and then the minor win there Monday, you got me on. So, yeah, all good.
You strike while the iron is hot when boys are in good form.
That's it, 100%. I know it was magic win there Monday. I think the Offaly put out the tweet there about the amount of underage they've won the last 5 years, and it's serious punching for a small county. I know people are probably going to be saying there's two Offaly lads on this now, but we won't make it into an Offaly cast. But great win Monday anyways.
Just on that, I've probably mentioned it regularly throughout the show, but the last 5 years has been a bit unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? It really has, considering what came before it. You have obviously the 21 Leinster, the 21 All-Ireland in football. You obviously have the minor hurling Leinster, getting to the All-Ireland final in the minor. Then they've a 20 Leinster, another 20 Leinster in hurling, an All-Ireland under 20, then a Leinster minor the other day, throw the Christy Ring, the McDonough promotion to 1A back into it, the Division 3 football title. It's all a bit hard to believe. It's like a rising tide has lifted all boats as well.
Exactly that, yeah. And you can't buy them days for the young lads going to the crowds at the under 20 hurlers brought the under 20 footballers. See Offaly teams winning all Ireland's that's not the thing. For when I was growing up, Offaly underage teams were nowhere near it. Even the teams I played on, we always seen ourselves we could beat Westmeath at least, but once we came into Meath, Kildare, Dublin, it was forget about it. And the teams now have changed that. Even the hurling beating Kilkenny or beating Tip, Galway, the young lads coming through there at Faithful Fields, some amount of work going on, and they're getting their gear there in O'Connor Park with the senior management, and you can see a path to the future. But it's definitely hugely positive anyway for Offaly.
What have you made of the rules, Cian? I'd imagine as a forward you're absolutely licking your lips.
Yeah, no, I'd be a big believer in the rules now, to be honest. It's unbelievable to not have to chase after a cornerback that doesn't want the ball.
You were actually one of the people that I thought of most, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, a lot of people will be saying I didn't run back anyway, but that's a separate point. But no, I would be a big believer in them, to be honest. I think when you make so many changes at once, there's always going to be small things here and there that people aren't happy with. But I think in general, anyone who watched football over the last few years, I think everyone was in agreement that something had to change. And I think, more scores, more attacks, longer kickouts, more contests, everything is going in the right direction. And I think you look at the All-Ireland there, even last year, like the starting 12 forwards, I think from Galway and Armagh only scored 2 points. Like that shouldn't be, like that should be the stats after 5 minutes. And even the nominations for Footballer of the Year was two defenders and a midfielder, like, which is nearly unheard of. So yeah, I would be a believer in them. There's some small things that I'm not a fan of. I really hate the 2-point free. I just think it's such a big reward for a fairly straightforward skill. Like you think of
the fact that we benefited massively the other night from it, but I would agree with you, yeah.
100%. And like that nearly backs up my point. Like there's 16-year-olds knocking over 2-pointers like it's nothing. And like you think of how good you have to be to get onto your county team, and then how good you have to be the free taker. Like it's like Shane Walsh, Sean O'Shea, these lads are knocking over 2 points. It's a gimme, like. And, just a harmless pull of an arm or something like that outside the arc, for 2 points. And I get the rationale behind it that, going down the stretch, if you're 2 points up, a team can just foul you because they know you're going for 1. But I don't know, like if you're in that situation and the hooter is against you, just play it short and try work it too. I think it's such a small part of the game that they're looking at there. But yeah, no, I think in general, it's positive. And I think the way Gaelic football has been talked about in general, like in the last
it's great. I go to a game, Keenan, and I'm buzzing going to a game. I'm going to Armagh Derry at the weekend, and I'll be like, geez, this is going to be a right game of football. You know what I mean? Yeah,
absolutely. Like, and like the last few years, like I'm a big, massive Gaelic football fan. I'd watch it no matter what. But passing fans, like the last few years, and they're not going to games because people are having conversations during it. You can go out and make a cup of tea and come back. Nothing has changed. And I think, in general, like the FRC have done a good job, but they've also done a good job promoting themselves. Like I think the way Eamon Fitzmaurice, like he has a massive platform there on the commentary and on a podcast. Same with Peter Canavan, he's on the FRC. Like all the ex-Dublin players that are in the media now, obviously they're big fans of Jim Gavin. Like they're all talking about it really glowingly, and that grows in your mind. Because like even if you compare it to hurling, like the way hurling talk about their own game. Like if you listen to Anthony Daly or Tommy Walsh, like there's never been a bad game of hurling. You know what I mean? Like, and football took an awful bash in the last few years, but I think it's turning the corner now.
It's great that lads. I know there's probably a bit of propaganda in there as well, potentially, especially when at the start when it wasn't all rosy and there were things that were annoying people, and it was maybe too positive, shall we say? But it is great to hear people speaking so glowingly about games, and they're not talking rubbish either. Like the games, there's at least 2 to 3 right good games every weekend. Whereas the last few years, you were nearly hanging your hat on, Dublin and Kerry in All-Ireland semi-final, Dublin and Mayo in All-Ireland. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, exactly. And like, and the big thing was people were afraid of, wait until the provincial start now in Division 1 against Division 4, and it's going to be 20 point hammers.
I fed into that as well now. I have to say.
Yeah, and like I would have thought the same, being honest about it. Like, but like you look at Dublin and Wicklow, I think there was only 7 points in it. Antrim were beating Armagh at half time in the championship. Like Antrim are lower half Division 3 against the All-Ireland champions. So I think the kickouts going long makes it more of a lottery, and coaches and managers hate that. That's one thing that they, like, as a coach or a manager, they love control, and the long kickouts and the more contests, it is a bit of a Royal Rumble around the middle for the ball. So yeah, I think it gives the underdog a bit more scope to stay in the game if you can knock over a couple of 2-pointers, and every kick out is nearly 50-50. So yeah, no, it's good for the smaller teams as well.
Have you seen any crack on the club scene with the rules, or any kind of mad stuff, or lads getting very vexed or forgetting rules and that kind of crack?
Yeah, like a small bit, but to be honest, like I actually think it's been it's worked better than a lot of people thought. Like even the 3-up, like we're playing club league games there at the minute, and like a referee is coming with maybe one umpire, maybe none at all, and like the game's going on behind them. But like lads just know it's part of the game. Like nobody's trying to breach it, because in championships there's going to be linesmen anyway. But I think that the handing the ball back, the solo and go, it's just becoming what we're used to. We're only a couple of months in. I think that was Jim Gavin's vision, that like underage players coming through now, they'll just do that because that's what you do. But yeah, there's a small bit, like the solo and go is annoying some people, that, how long do you give it before you're allowed to tackle someone after a solo and go? That's purely up to the discretion of the referee. It's meant to be 4 meters, but some refs are blowing it, some aren't. The solo and go actually as well. I'm looking at county games here the whole time. It's meant to be solo and go. So you solo the ball and then you run. Lads are getting fouled and running 4 yards and then soloing it. also lads are bouncing the ball, it's called a solo and go, not a bounce and go. Like it's there's a lot of things that are coming up. Even the Conor Gleeson there dribbling out the kick out to himself last weekend. Like that's actually not a new rule. I didn't know that. That was always in the rules that you could do that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So you were always allowed to do that, but I think it just came. Teams were more aware of it because of the new rules, but. It's never really been done before, and even the Dublin players, when Conor Gleeson did it, they were like, "Here, what's going on? This is a free," but it's actually not. I don't get the advantage to why you do it. You probably get Pádraig Joyce on, but yeah.
I suppose it's if the other team sits off you completely, and then you're on the ball, but
yeah,
don't know how much it is. River Power asks a funny question: is Vernie's t-shirt inside out? I actually had to look down. It's definitely not. Out. It kind of looks like it here with the lines, but I can assure you that it's not. You're talking about Dublin there, like probably being foolishly written off just on the basis of that Meath game. And even when I think back to 2010 when Meath put the 5 goals on him, like Dublin could have won the All Ireland in 2010 still, should have beaten Cork in the All Ireland semi-final, and they were that good, and Brogan was that good that even got Footballer of the Year despite Dublin not even getting to a final. So we probably shouldn't be that surprised. And I have to say, I thought it was gas. People writing an obituary for Cluxton in particular. I was like, come here. If anybody, he is the most credit in the bank of any footballer in the history of the game. And I think it was as much to do with the outfield players the day against Meath as it was to do with him. But him and Kilkenny were unbelievable the other day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think like sometimes there's no better motivation than being written off and having a chip on your shoulder. But I think Dessie Farrell said in an interview after that, they went back to the DNA of Dublin, and that's just the work rate, the intensity, the basics. Like to see some of them lads who've 8 or 9 All-Ireland medals play like they have never won one before, it was just unbelievable. And yeah, you mentioned Cluxton there. Like when the new rules came in and short kickouts are effectively gone, like you'd think that would be a good time for him to go. Especially when he came back and got his win in 23, and with Fenton and McCarthy gone this year, you think that would be enough. But Jesus Christ, his mental strength, his preparation, everything to keep performing at that level is unbelievable.
It's freakish, Keane, really. Like
yeah,
no, like his groin problems and some hip problems. I think he definitely had a bit of a nick on his knee. I think up until maybe about 2 or 3 months ago, and he just comes back there, and the kick out for Lahif, like at the end, like Jesus Christ, when the pressure is on at its highest, and he just delivers yet again.
Yeah, and like that's who you'd want. If you want any goalkeeper of all time to be in that position, it's him. And yeah, like I don't know, like how is his body holding up to? Like imagine the amount of reps you'd have to do, like your hips, your groin, your knee, like it's unbelievable. I think that last play was very interesting because when Lorcan O'Dell got pulled for steps and the free was advanced 50 metres, like Dublin were a point up, and I was thinking, would Shane Walsh not put this on the ground and go for a 2-pointer? But John Daly took the free quick, and Match Tierney then hand passed it over, so Dublin had one last play. But then when Dublin got that kick out away, there was a time where Lorcan O'Dell was on the ball, and I think it was Kilkenny was inside him with nobody marking him, and everyone was screaming like, give it to him, but it was kind of like they were watching the clock. They played it around till the hooter went, and they had one last play. And I think that's trademark Dublin. And Lorcan O'Dell would be he's been around a while, but he hasn't had massive experience in big games. But yeah, look, everything that Dublin were good at throughout the years came out again at the weekend. And to go to Salt Hill, like Galway, everyone's tipping Galway, 1 or 2 in the country. Massive win, yeah. So yeah, they'll be thereabouts again.
From a Galway point of view, providing they get through, which you'd imagine they will, even though it's a very, very tough group, maybe a defeat along the way is probably no harm, just to realise, okay, we're not the finished product. And when you are beaten like that, it does put a bit of a fire under you as well. That victories don't do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like they've been here before as well. Like it feels like every year Galway are in the worst group. Like they always get shafted with the draw. But yeah, it's hard to know. Like everyone's tipping Galway. They have an unbelievable kind of 8 to 15. They're middle third, which was, to be fair, up to this point had been very good. Dublin wiped them on kickouts. Padder Coffey Byrne, that was kind of a coming of age performance from him. But yeah, it's hard to know with Galway. A lot of people will be saying, get Walsh and Comer back. Like I'd love to know when they've been on the field together for 70 minutes in the last 2 or 3 years. The best ability is availability sometimes, and the two of them are just never available enough. So look, it's hard to know. like you'd imagine they pick up a win somewhere and get out with a group, but if they don't finish first, they're going to be playing preliminary quarter-final week on week from there. So, yeah, look, you wouldn't write them off, but geez, that was a massive blow there at the weekend.
The best ability is availability. I like that one now. I might be stealing that one. To be honest with you. But it's gas. I covered the horse racing as well, and you'd be comparing horses from different generations. And it's the same with the player that shows up every day and is always fit. That's why, geez, like how many games did James McCarthy miss in his career? How many games did Fenton miss a championship game? I think the suspended game was the only game he nearly missed. Am I right in saying, like, it is? Yeah. When lads are kind of coming in and out and the fitness is a question, when you know somebody's going to be there, like TJ Reid, he's going to be there nearly every day for the guts of 15 years or whatever. It is massive. Just looking at the games this weekend, Cian, actually just quickly talk about Mayo. Can Mayo come back from what is, the latest, nearly kind of seems like a bit of a knockout blow almost. It's not a knockout blow because they're probably still going to come back through the back door, but
yeah.
Not to be beaten by a marquee side and be beaten at home, small attendance, a bit of an apathy around Mayo football at the minute as well. Where do you think they are, and can they resurrect again?
Yeah, like it's hard to know. Like I didn't see this as a massive shock. Like I would have seen it as a surprise. It was being put all over the place that this is an unbelievable shock. Like Cavan are a mid-tier Division 2 team. Mayo are probably the bottom half of Division 1. I didn't see it as a massive shock. Look, Mayo, I suppose, similar to what you were saying there about Kilkenny hurlers recently, they're kind of been built up to a level of that they're just not at compared to previous teams. Like this team just does not have the quality. I think if you said to Jack O'Connor, Jim McGuinness, Pádraig Joyce, how many Mayo players do you want to go into your first 15? Outside of Ryan O'Donoghue, who I think you're struggling. So I'm not sure where it's coming from. The only thing is that what we were saying there, I think it is very reactionary these days with social media over one result. Like people are saying Mayo, that's their year finished. Like Mayo have a massive ability to get themselves into massive holes, but they also have a good ability to get themselves out of them as well. Because I'd be looking at this group now and I'd be thinking Mayo are playing Donegal in the last group game, and I'd be thinking Donegal will have the group sewn up at that stage. Jim McGuinness has been very tactical about how Donegal have went through their schedule, the warm weather training at Christmas time when nobody does it, folding up the tent halfway through the league. I think if Donegal win their first two games, they'll have first pots sewn up. I think Mayo could possibly sneak a win against Donegal last day, and then they have to go to Oma in between that. So I wouldn't write them off getting out of the group, but as in terms of going forward, I don't know. I'm not sure if you've seen any of it, but I think the Mayo supporters, and I'm not saying it's all of them, but the reaction online, I know social media is toxic these days, but it just seems to be so bad when it's Mayo.
Brutal, yeah, very bad.
Like they're going after the manager, the players, and it's not even like criticism of their game. It's actually personal stuff. And I don't know, is it almost like Man United, like that the jersey is too heavy for some of the players? Like Aidan O'Shea, like he played 200 games for Mayo. If he was in any other county, he'd be lauded. Some lads wouldn't play 200 games for the club. And they have a terrible record in Castlebar. I don't know, it'd be interesting to talk to someone from Mayo. I just think it's chronic bad when it's them. Yeah.
Just quickly here, a couple of comments in. Richard Hogan says, losing an All-Ireland under 20 final followed by a poor performance against Cavan. Mayo have big issues behind the scenes, no centre of excellence and struggling for pitches. I do think that's a lot of it. There's a lot of people questioning the finances at the minute and what's going on in the background there. And I think that's more to do with it. Listen, me and you have seen a lot of it, like with Offaly performances, and you're nearly thinking, sure, like they don't deserve to win this game years ago when things were going bad, because you can just put this big stack of cons, bad things that are going on, and you have a couple of pros, but you're just like, Asher, how would you win when X and Y is? I do think there's a bit of that in Mayo, and me and you are obviously from the Midlands, and we don't know the intricate details of what's going on in Mayo, but it does seem to be very, very downbeat at the minute. And Talaman GA just says crowd gone, yeah. And Pegleg Lonergan says relying on Aidan O'Shea to get scores not good. Yeah, their forwards are not functioning as a unit at all at the minute, and they haven't been functioning for a while either. Just looking at the games this weekend, Cian, what are we looking at? Probably Donegal Tyrone is one of the marquee games anyway, definitely particular. And Armagh Derry, I find it hard to believe how that's not been broadcast live anywhere as well. Surely you'd be looking at that and thinking, that's definitely top two, at minimum the third best game of the All-Ireland series this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like the All-Ireland champions going to Derry, or home to Derry. Sorry, I think a lot of people are sleeping on Derry a small bit. Like this has been billed as a group of death, and Derry are finishing fourth. That's really what people are saying. Word on the street is Derry are going well in challenge games. What does that mean? Probably nothing. Roscommon were meant to be going well in challenge games as well, and they got pumped at the weekend. I don't know. Has anyone ever lost a challenge game? Like all you ever hear is that teams teams are absolutely flying it. But yeah, like Derry's form since winning the league last year, they've lost 11 games out of 14. So they've only won 3 games in nearly a year and a half. I don't know if you've seen Gavin Devlin's comments recently that basically the Derry players only want one man to be their manager, and that's Rory Gallagher. It's not going to happen. But I think they need to draw a line under that at this stage and just get on with it. Paddy Talley got the job late, and it's ironic that he made his name as a defensive coach. Kerry's All-Ireland win in 22 was down to him. Tyke Morley sitting in the pockets. They only conceded 1 goal all year, and Derry can't defend for their lives. They shipped 4 goals at Armagh, 4 at Kerry. The one thing I would say is the personnel at their backs. Chrissy McKaig retired. McKinless cruciate. Conor McCluskey hasn't kicked the ball. Paul McGrogan is just back. So that's 4 all-star defenders that you are missing. But
even Rogers was injured for Ulster and was only coming back after getting injured in that Donegal game. Like that's at least 7 lads. But I believe the vast majority that are available to play, they're all nearly as good to go this weekend.
Okay, yeah, well, that'd be massive. And I think, like the last 2 years when they went back-to-back Ulster titles under Rory Gallagher, they carried a very thin squad. They didn't have many players outside their matchday 26, and they always used the same 17, 18 players. And I think they could be paying for that a small bit now because lads don't have exposure to that high level of Division 1 football. But even looking at Armagh, I think their response is going to be very interesting because the last 2 years after losing Ulster finals, they've scraped over Westmeath twice in the first group game. So this is their biggest test after that 2-week turnaround. And I think there's a lot been made of Armagh saying they've only 6 or 7 from last year's All-Ireland final winning team playing. And like that is kind of extraordinary, but I don't think it's solely down to lads missing. Like I think a lot of lads have just lost their places. You look at probably a lot of Armagh's best players this year on transition have been Ross McQuillan and Jarly O'Byrnes because of their pace that they're bringing to it with the new rules. Like they were on the bench last year. Oisin O'Neill as well has been a revelation with the 2-pointers. So a lot of lads have just actually kicked other lads off the team. Obviously, Rian O'Neill will be the outlier in that if he comes back, he'll be starting. But yeah, it'd be interesting. I'd expect Derry to give it a fair crack for 50 or 60 minutes and maybe Armagh just to squeak it by a few points.
Just on that's what Derry were doing for the vast majority of league games. They were there for about an hour. Derry have Carborough Carolan, he's their S&C man. He was with Tip when they won a hurling All-Ireland. He was with Limerick up until last year as well. They were back early, so I would expect them to be, I think they were well behind now. It looked like they were well behind. I expect them to be at least on par with most teams conditioning-wise. I do think it's going to be interesting. Just on Rian O'Neill, what do you do? What do you do with him? He's back a couple of weeks, obviously. Do you bite the bullet? And we obviously don't know. We're not privy to what's going on behind the scenes. But do you bite the bullet and put him in and get game time for what you're hoping will be, so that he can play big minutes in Croke Park, the important minutes in Croke Park later in the year? Or is it a case where you really have to earn your place back? Or what credit's in the bank for the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's hard to know. Like, are you going to put other lads' nose out of joint if he comes back in and starts playing? It's hard to know because from McGeeney's interviews, nobody really seemed to know what the crack was. He didn't even seem to know sometimes. Like he was turning up to some games, on the bench or with the subs, and then he was missing again. But he seems to be back. I just think under the new rules, he'd be an absolute 2-point merchant. So I think he'd be so important to get him back, and as you said, get him game time for further down the line. So I'd say maybe if he's fit to bring him off the bench or something, but yeah, no, he'd be massive for Armagh, all right.
What do you make of Donegal? Obviously, very, very fine margins in the Ulster final. Come here, you were surely someone who was salivating over Michael Murphy in the Ulster final, I presume.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, Jesus Christ, that's some comeback. I was only thinking of sports people who've stepped away and come back. Like where does that rank? I know we look at GAA over other sports, but to be away for 2 years and perform at that level, it's just insane. There's 2 interesting things that I think about Donegal. One is just they're not kicking the ball in transition, and I know they left 2 into Murphy the last day, but that was the first 2 they've nearly done all year. And I don't know. Like, that's obviously a principle of play, saying if we turn over the ball, we run it through the hands. We do not kick that ball. And under the old rules, like, they would have had 15 behind the ball, and when you turn it over, you have nobody to hit, and that's maybe the excuse. But now there's a 3 up. Like, you're thinking of Gallen, McBrearty, Murphy, and they're not kicking it. So I'd be interested to see when they get further down the line to Croke Park, will they need that kicking game? Because I think that's something that's really going to benefit Kerry down the line. But another thing would be how Donegal are defending the arc. I don't know if it's something from Jim McGuinness' soccer background, but they're actually defending the arc really, really deep. Even deeper than the 40 metres that most teams are defending it. And I think the reason behind that is they're offering up team shots, maybe that they're saying, go on, shoot from there, you won't score. And even last year against Louth, they conceded 35 shots in the quarterfinal. And like, this is where stats can be deceiving. Like, if you looked at that, you'd say, Jesus, Louth were wasteful. But like, where are them shots coming from? Who's taking them? Are they under pressure? And I think the last 4 times that Armagh have played Donegal, Armagh have had more shots, but Donegal have won. So I think it's definitely something that they're looking at. And Monaghan actually killed them for a few 2-pointers. But, you know, the way that they're throwing themselves at the ball as well for diving blocks, they're not afraid to get done by a dummy solo. And like, even as a shooter, if you're going to shoot and some lad's diving on your boot, you're automatically thinking, I have to try to get this over him. And I think that's something that Armagh and Donegal do a lot better than other teams. They throw themselves on the kicker's foot. They're not afraid to get done by a dummy and there's someone in behind. But there'll be 2 things that I'd be interested to see with Donegal ahead of this weekend. But there'll be a fair sting in Tyrone as well. They've been lying in the long grass for 5 weeks. So, yeah, how would you see it?
Yeah, I'd have Donegal ahead by a point or 2 in most games they play, just because of what McGuinness brings to the table and his tactical kind of nous that he brings to the table there. And just think, Jesus, it has all the hallmarks of 2012 written all over it at the minute. He did nearly a replica of what he did in 2011 in 2024, and he's well on his way to kind of achieving what he did already. And I do agree with you. They probably tanked the second half at league, but they could afford to, if he can pull up stumps a small bit for that third game, buy a bit of rest and recovery, get bodies out there or whatever, and still be in a good position going into that quarter final. I think they'll do that. So I think that they will be going full bore for this game at the weekend to try and get points on the board. Something similar to what they did last year and get themselves in a good spot. And I'm just fascinated to see when they do get to Croke Park, which they will, just Will Murphy's addition around the place. In the dressing room, on the pitch, I'm sure he's helped with the rules as well. I'm sure it's helped massively. Yeah. And the amount of, I think it's gas with the FRC, the amount of big figures within the FRC who have had, like even O'Rourke was obviously on the FRC as well. So you have a lot of big figures going back to county teams and basically using their expertise there as well. But I think Donegal probably squeaked that one at the weekend. Probably see Armagh just about getting over the line against Derry, but I don't think it'll be easy. Louth and Monaghan. Monaghan have been very good this year. Just beating a score, I think, by Donegal when they played them. How do you see this one going? And can Louth, how quickly or easy will it be to come down from the cloud that they've been on? I know Ger Brennan said that you can't enjoy it for too long or it affects what's coming after, but geez, it would have been hard not enjoy that for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And like, no matter what happens from here, like Louth they look back on this season as one of their best in their history. But as you said, like, you know, it's a 2-week turnaround. Like, how long did they get back training? How long did they spend celebrating? Monaghan have been waiting there a long time. I would see Monaghan by 5 or 6 points in this game, to be honest, just because of that. But Louth, yeah, like they were missing a lot of players during the league. Samuel Roy was out with his hamstring. Kieran Keenan, Kieran Downey, Kieran Byrne as well. So, like, if they didn't have them injuries, they could have went close to promotion to Division 1. Yeah, unbelievable win in Leinster. But I really like Monaghan. I think Monaghan are a serious team. I think they were the highest scorers in the league across all 4 divisions. I know Andy Moran's in there as a forwards coach. Micheál Bannigan, David Garland, absolutely ripping it up. So I do think that Monaghan went very close. Donegal, they were a couple of points away from them. They actually could have had another play if Ryan O'Toole got that ball back in quicker with the hooter. So, like, everyone would see Donegal as 1, 2, 3 for the All-Ireland, but nobody's really talking about Monaghan. I think, like, Monaghan are third seeds in this group, and let's be honest about it, like, they've got an unbelievable draw, you know, Down, Clare and Louth, and your third seeds. So I think Monaghan will top this group and go straight to All-Ireland quarter-final. Would not be surprised to see Monaghan take out a big hitter in Croke Park, because even in the league final there against Roscommon, they think kicked nearly 25 or 26 points. So they've got unbelievable kickers, very well set up team. So yeah, I'd be big on Monaghan now for this championship.
It's gas. The two bolters that I was looking at were Monaghan and Roscommon, and I was kind of leaning on the Roscommon side. I suppose a lot of it was to do with I covered the Roscommon Monaghan game up in the high, and I was just really impressed with what I saw. They haven't built on their league campaign fell apart, and this is real disappointing in the Connacht semi-final. Just like really disappointing last weekend again. Whereas you're looking at Monaghan's form graph has actually gotten higher. The league was very good, finished really strong with that Roscommon win in the final. We're really competitive against Donegal and could have potentially maybe got something out of that. So yeah, if there's to be a bolter, and with the way the groups are working out, if they do top the group, they're going to buy themselves a bit of time to kind of rest and be ready for a quarter final against somebody coming through that's had a harder path than them. So it's set up for them if they're going to get to a semi-final, or maybe potentially a bit further. You never know. It's kind of, it'll never be set up for them better than it will be this year. I'll put it to you that way. Any comments or any great thoughts on Meath and Cork, Cian?
I think this is kind of two teams that would probably traditional counties that would see themselves as a higher level than they're currently at. I think it's their first meeting in championship that's not an All-Ireland semi-final or final. They've never played at any other stage, so it's hard to know. I think Meath really need the supporters this weekend. Like, Meath had a good 25,000-30,000 in Croke Park. Like, how many of them were jumping on the bandwagon, smelt a bit of silverware? Like, will there be 15?
Vast majority. Yeah.
Will there be 15,000 in Navan this weekend? Like, they need their supporters this weekend. If they lose to Cork, they're away to Roscommon next week. Season could unravel. This is a young Meath team. They beat Dublin. They lost two of their coaches right before the start of the championship. Don't think that could be underestimated, how that could impact the group. So I think Meath really need the home crowd. I'd see this 1 or 2 points either way, and the home support could swing it. So I think I'd be interested to see what sort of Meath support turns out. Cork, hard to read. Division 2 was very close this year. The only thing I'd say about Cork is a lot of their big performances are against Kerry. And they should have beaten Kerry this year in the Munster, but I think it's a bad trait of a team that you can only get yourselves up because you hate your rivals. So I'd like to see Cork, go out and put a statement and beat Meath, but yeah, a couple of points either way, I couldn't call it. Wouldn't rule out a draw.
We all know club teams where they rise their game like 50-60%. One of your near rivals often used to do that against G, actually. Your near rivals geographically, I should say, but they need to be consistent. Like, Jesus, remember that putrid score they put up against Louth last year in that qualifier game where they're beating it in a scheme. Like, I know Louth, maybe it was a defensive game or whatever, but Jesus, that was really bad. I'm only thinking Chris O'Jones is probably a hero of yours, I'd say.
Yeah, he's ripping it up. Doesn't have to burn up the legs, and scoring a few goals on the other side as well. So yeah, no, he's a great forward. And Brian Hurley as well. Two of them will cause problems for anyone. Ian Maguire and Colin Callaghan, big side around the middle. So yeah, I'd like to see Cork kick on. Like, I love watching Cork growing up. Daniel Goulding, Donegal O'Connor, these unbelievable forwards, unbelievable kickers. So I'd love to see Cork, kick on to All-Ireland semi-final or something like that. But
yeah, Noel O'Leary was my man back in the day. I loved that. Like, the crack he had going on with Galvin for ages was brilliant. Like, and they were just going out, dragging out of each other and trying to stop them getting on ball and this kind of crack.
Yeah, unbelievable. We're nearly finished, are we?
Yeah, I was just going to chat to you about Tailteann Cup, to be honest with you, quickly.
Oh, no, Grant. Yeah, no, I was just going to throw one at you there. Did you see Peter Keane with the reporter from Clare? I was just going to ask you, just from your point of view, I suppose you would have been interviewed a lot of managers. Like, have you ever had any awkward situations? And is it difficult when it's your own county? Like, would it be difficult for you to put across hard questions to an Offaly manager?
I tell you what, Cian, I think it's when you're working for national press, I think it's easier because you're looking at it from a broader picture. And you're kind of given the national angle, but when you're working for local press, it's really the nuts and bolts of what's going on locally and what the mood is on the ground, etc. And like you'd see that locally with the Offaly reporters, with Roscommon reporters, or whatever, Clare reporters as well. And the thing about that is you're dealing with them every week and every game. Like, I haven't seen Peter Keane yet, so I can come in and throw him any question I want, and I mightn't see him again for a while. But when you're a manager every week, it's a little bit more difficult, and it can get a bit spiky, and it can be same questions coming from same lads, and it can either be very pally, or it can be the other way. So it's funny that looks like what's happened there. And listen, it's the same with Shane Brophy throwing that question at Liam Cahill last year about his tenure and whether he was going up the third year, and that nearly probably hurt most because it was a local question and a tip person asking him, and it's probably something similar here. But it can be a fine line you're walking, but it's very difficult when you're meeting them every week. And like if you're working for local press and you don't get on with the county manager in either code, it's very, very difficult to do your job as well. So there's always going to be a little sense of keeping them somewhat close because it's a relationship or a partnership that you kind of rely on. So it's a tricky one. It really, really is a tricky one, you know. But now I think Peter Keane will be well warned about anything he says from now on because you know, once you open your mouth, very little is off the record these days. Just on the Tailteann Cup, Keane, what have you made so far? 2 rounds down, obviously. Rest weekend this weekend. Who's impressed you outside of Luke Loughlin? Who's impressed you? Who are the players that are ripping it up?
Yeah, so I suppose the Leinster teams, you're looking at Offaly, Kildare, Westmeath are probably the favourites. I think the story of the Tailteann Cup so far has been Carlow. I think, you know, they had, you know, losing their manager, Shane Curran, you know, he was making accusations about the players not returning from London from that league game or whatever went on there. You know, I think the players brought a statement and squashed it. I think they're really proud Carlow players. You know, to bring in Joe Murphy from Naas, you know, very late notice, and to go to Fermanagh away and beat them, like that was, to me, that was a result. There were 7 points down there the weekend to Wexford and got a draw. So they have Longford now in a neutral venue to top the group. So I definitely think Carlow is the story so far. Dara Foley out of retirement. I think it's nearly 15 years playing for Carlow. He's back out of retirement, playing centre forward. Like, I don't know, he must have been training with the club or something over the winter, but to come back in and play there, unbelievable. Ross Dunphy, Mikey Bambrick ripping it up for Carlow. So I'd say they've been the story so far. I think other than that, it's gone fairly much to plan so far. The seeded teams are showing their strength. But yeah, I'd say Offaly, Westmeath, Kildare will be knocking around the semi-final stage, and maybe Sligo. But yeah, I think Kildare have to win it, to be honest with you. Like, where are you going from there if Kildare can't win the Tailteann Cup 2 years in a row? And it's interesting that Offaly have beaten Kildare twice already, and there's a fair chance that they'll meet again. So, like, I mean, Kildare, like, I mean, if they let Offaly beat them 3 times in 1 year, like, I mean, I don't know, like, there's Kildare people that would never have fathomed that a few years ago.
Yeah, it's from an Offaly point of view, it's good that I don't think they weren't great by all accounts against Wicklow, but they got over the line. They weren't great last weekend, but they got over the line. I don't think, you might know a bit more, but I don't think there's any major absentees or anything like that, apart from Nigel Dunn kind of retiring mid-season, and that was to do with his body. That was solely to do with that, basically. So it's good to see just our record in the qualifiers and in the Tailteann Cup has been. We obviously got to a semi-final and were well tanked by Westmeath there a couple of years ago, but our record in second in, you know, the back door has been terrible down through the years. So it's good to see that been somewhat squashed. Just on Mickey Hart, was there any fear you've been in there or anything like that?
No, I wasn't asked. To be honest, I think there was something going around after the county final that there was a few phone numbers asked for, and it got narrowed down after the county final. Whatever happened. So yeah, no, I wasn't asked. That's where it's at. But yeah, no, I'm training hard with the club. We lost the final by a point. And last 2 years ago, we lost by 2. So, you know, it's 2 county final defeats last 2 years. But, you know, we're doing everything we can now to try to chase them 1%ers. You know, the league is going fairly well. We should be looking at a semi-final. And, like, we've 5 lads in with the Offaly hurlers. So they'll be finished this weekend one way or another. So that'll strengthen us up. But, yeah, no, hopefully have a good club campaign. And, yeah, geez, yeah, I'd love to play for Mickey Hart, to be honest.
Yeah. Just he's brought some amount to the table already. Like, even by all accounts, I was hearing anecdotally on the ground that the mood music wasn't even too hectic going into the league, and then all of a sudden a couple of results under their belt and they have just flourished since.
Yeah, like a lot of people were tipping off to be relegated from 3. Like, I think it's a combination of everything. Probably Mickey Hart coming in, a combination of the new rules suit a lot of our younger players because they're very small, dynamic and fast, and then just, I suppose, they're a year older. And I think, like, you know, beating Laois by so many but fairly heavily in the second round, you know, beating Kildare twice. Like, these are teams that Offaly would have struggled with in the past years. And I think, you know, Offaly should be in the Sam Maguire really going off league rankings because they won Division 3. But Clare winning the Munster draw and Clare getting to the provincial final knocked Offaly out of Sam Maguire. Now, some people would say, you know, they prefer to be in Sam Maguire, play the big teams, but like, when you look at the beatings that Clare are taking, maybe for development, it's better to win a Tailteann. But yeah, we'll see.
I think age profile wise, we no harm to get a right good run the Tailteann. Chase if Offaly could win the Tailteann Cup, it'd be deadly, and you'd be going up. You'd have earned your place at, you know, the exact way. It would be a great way to get All Ireland football. I'll put it to you that way. Cian, great stuff. Great to have you back, and no doubt we'll chat very soon. Although, as you say yourself, it's probably a bit unbalanced to have two Offaly lads talking football. But thanks a million, Cian. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, Michael.
Great stuff, folks. That's it for this week's show, and we'll be back again next Thursday at 4 o'clock. Big thanks to our sponsors, Lotto Land, and we'll chat to you again next week.